Sometimes a moment so small, so innocent, can ripple through time, shaping destinies in ways no one could foresee. For Jacob Carter and Cynthia James, their story began in a sandbox on a sunny playground in Savannah, Georgia. A simple, heartfelt promise uttered by a shy boy would become the seed of a tale that spanned decades. But they didn't know that yet. On a crisp autumn morning, the playground of a small preschool buzzed with the joyful energy of children. Among the crowd was a little girl named Cynthia, her curls bouncing as she darted from the swings to the sandbox. Cynthia wasn't just another child on the playground. She was the leader of every game, the spark of every laugh. She had an energy that could light up the world around her. At a distance, a quiet boy named Jacob watched her. Jacob preferred the edges of the playground, content to sit with his toy cars and observe. But today, something about Cynthia pulled at him. The way she laughed without hesitation, her confidence radiating like the warm sun. Gathering all his courage, he approached the sandbox, his favorite toy car clenched in his small hand. "Want to help me build a castle?" Cynthia asked, flashing a grin that melted Jacob's nervousness. He nodded and sat beside her. Together, they dug and shaped the sand, giggling as they added twigs and leaves to their masterpiece. By the time the morning bell rang, the two were inseparable. From then on, wherever Cynthia went, Jacob followed. The teachers called him her little shadow, a nickname that made Cynthia giggle and Jacob blush. One sunny afternoon, as they sat on the swings, Cynthia declared, "One day, I'm going to travel the whole world. Everywhere." Jacob glanced at her, admiration shining in his eyes. "Then I'll go with you," he said earnestly. "One day, I'm going to marry you." Cynthia laughed, scrunching her nose. "Okay," she teased, "but you have to promise to bring snacks." "I promise," Jacob replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart. In his young mind, it was the most natural thing in the world to say. Life, as it often does, moved faster than they could understand. On the last day of preschool, Cynthia's mother knelt down to tell her that they would be moving to Charleston, South Carolina. Cynthia was thrilled at the idea of a new adventure, but Jacob stood quietly nearby, the weight of their parting already settling in his small chest. As the final bell rang, Jacob held out his favorite blue toy car to Cynthia. "So you don't forget me," he whispered. Cynthia took it, her tiny fingers curling around the car as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "I'll keep it forever," she promised, her voice strong despite the sadness in her eyes. They hugged tightly, their small arms wrapped around each other for what felt like both a moment and an eternity. Then, with a final wave, they walked away with their parents, their young minds unable to grasp just how much life was about to change. Time marched on, and the memories of that playground began to blur. In Charleston, Cynthia found her stride at a new school with a strong arts program. She spent her days painting, sketching, and exploring her creativity. Her room became a gallery of her growing talent, but tucked away in a drawer was Jacob's blue toy car, a quiet reminder of the boy who had promised to follow her anywhere. Meanwhile, in Savannah, Jacob excelled in school, his natural curiosity driving him toward robotics and engineering. Though he made friends and found his own passions, there were moments, during quiet afternoons or while solving a tricky problem, when he thought of Cynthia. Her laughter echoed faintly in his mind, her boldness a memory that inspired him to push a little harder, dream a little bigger. As the years passed, their bond became a distant, cherished memory. Neither of them knew that the quiet pull they felt, the occasional thought of the other, was something far deeper than nostalgia. And life had its own plans for these two, plans neither could have foreseen. One afternoon, Cynthia was hanging out with her best friend, scrolling through photos on her friend's phone. Laughing at silly selfies and candid moments, her laughter suddenly faltered when she spotted a familiar name in her friend's contact list, Jacob Carter. She blinked, the name pulling at something deep within her. "How do you know Jacob Carter?" she asked, trying to sound casual, though her heart was racing. Her friend looked up, surprised. "Oh, he's in my history class." "Why?" Memories she hadn't revisited in years flooded back. Jacob's shy smile, the blue toy car he had given her, the promise he had made. "We were friends," she replied simply, though the word didn't feel big enough to describe what they had been. Without hesitation, her friend suggested reconnecting with him. Cynthia hesitated, unsure if Jacob would even remember her, but her friend insisted. Within hours, Cynthia's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Jacob. Do you remember me?" Cynthia stared at the screen, her heart pounding as she opened the message. She couldn't help but smile as she typed her reply. "Of course I do. How could I forget?" The first conversation was a rush of laughter and nostalgia. They reminisced about the sandbox, the swings, and the promise Jacob had made all those years ago. To Cynthia's surprise, Jacob remembered every detail, her boldness, her laugh, and even the snacks she had jokingly demanded. Their connection, dormant for so long, reignited with ease. The texts turned into phone calls, and the phone calls turned into plans to meet. When they finally saw each other again, it felt as though no time had passed, yet they were meeting as entirely new people. Cynthia noticed the confidence Jacob carried now, his once shy demeanor replaced by quiet determination. Jacob, in turn, saw how Cynthia's creativity and energy had only deepened, her presence as magnetic as ever. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Jacob attended Cynthia's art shows, standing proudly in the crowd as she explained her work to admirers. Cynthia cheered for Jacob at his robotics competitions, her voice the loudest in the room. They weren't just reconnecting, they were building something new. But life wasn't done testing them. As high school graduation approached, so did the looming reality of college. Cynthia was accepted into the prestigious North Carolina School of the Arts, while Jacob earned a scholarship to Georgia Tech in Atlanta. Both celebrated their achievements, but there was an unspoken fear between them: the distance. They promised to stay connected. Texts turned into daily lifelines, and video calls became their new normal. On weekends, they visited each other, cherishing every moment together. Yet the strain of being apart was undeniable. There were late-night arguments born of exhaustion and longing, and days when the miles between them felt impossible to bridge. But through every challenge, their bond remained unshaken. They leaned on the foundation of their history, the promises made in childhood, and reinforced through years of friendship and love. By the end of their junior year in college, Jacob had a plan. He wanted to show Cynthia just how serious he was about their future, how much their shared story meant to him. One warm spring weekend, he invited her to Savannah, insisting he had a surprise for her. Cynthia, curious but unsuspecting, agreed. Jacob took her to their old preschool, now transformed into a community center. As they walked the grounds, the memories of their childhood came rushing back. The sandbox, the swings, and the day Jacob had promised to marry her. Cynthia laughed, playfully teasing him about his sentimentality, but she didn't notice the nervous way he glanced at her. When they reached the corner of the playground, Jacob suddenly dropped to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. "Cynthia," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion, "I promised you once that I'd marry you, and I've carried that promise with me every day since. You are my best friend, my first love, and my forever. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Cynthia's face as she nodded, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes," she whispered, then laughed through her tears. "But you still owe me snacks." In October 2017, Jacob and Cynthia stood hand in hand at their wedding on Hilton Head Island, surrounded by the friends and family who had watched their journey unfold. Their first dance was to a whole new world, a nod to their shared dreams and the magic of their love story. They moved to Atlanta, where Jacob began his career as an engineer, and Cynthia pursued her dream of becoming a renowned artist. Their days were filled with laughter, challenges, and the unshakable bond they had built over decades. Through every obstacle, they leaned on the promise that had started it all. Their story became a testament to the enduring power of love, friendship, and fate, a love that began with a sandcastle and grew into a lifetime. What do you think about Jacob and Cynthia's story? Do you believe in childhood promises or fate bringing people back together? Have you ever reconnected with someone from your past and felt that same spark? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below. Thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more heartwarming stories. See you next time.